Hi, welcome. For those of you who are not familiar with me or my practice, my name is Megan Warren, and I'm a certified coach, and I specialize in emotional resilience. If you don't know what emotional resilience is, you're not alone. Essentially, it's being able to learn to respond to people and situations, especially those that challenge you, in ways that honor yourself, but also let you create win-win solutions. They say that life gives you what you most need to learn. And as I scored under the national average in the US for emotional resilience in the beginning of this journey, let's just say that understanding that journey, the before as well as the after, is really the part that helps me see through the client's struggles to their strength and their ability to create emotional stability for themselves. In addition to being an emotional resilience coach, I am also an expat single mom, and my background is in public health and business development. So if this video or any of the other ones that I've made and put out there resonates with you, subscribe to my channel. I'm going to be putting out weekly videos that look at a variety of the challenges that we encounter in life and give you some ways to help you navigate them. In the video today, we're going to examine why you have trouble making decisions and what you can do to make purposeful and clear decisions in service of yourself. Now, as with many topics, this one hits personally close to home because every time it comes up in a client session, I think, yeah, I used to have trouble making decisions too. So, actually, correction. I used to have trouble making decisions for myself. Either I didn't feel strongly about any particular thing, or sometimes I wanted to be able to predict the outcome before moving forward. And so, kind of as a result of that, I spent a lot of time in pause, right? For those of you Monopoly fans, I did not pass go. I did not collect $200. I stayed stuck. And in that life, I wasn't satisfied. I wasn't fulfilled. Then luckily, I did two things that transformed my decision making. And it absolutely changed my life. So, firstly, I rewrote the rules that consciously and mostly unconsciously guided my life. And then I also defined my values. Now, these two things seem really simple, but they are really powerful and effective at transforming your who. And it's from that who, knowing who you are, that you see the world differently, more clearly. Reorienting your framework around your core beliefs and priorities, and then giving yourself a values-tinted lens, or a new perspective through which to make the choices around what fits in your framework, it's absolutely life-changing. Rewriting your rules requires that you become aware of the guidelines that you use to make those choices every day. How many of those rules were rules that you absorbed versus rules that you consciously adopted as an adult? If you're operating by rules that you absorbed, then your framework, it's not conscious or purposeful. And how could you possibly make life decisions that are clear and serve you when you are operating in a framework that you didn't choose? And probably one that you can't immediately articulate. To use a personal example, I discovered that even though I'm not religious, I am spiritual, but I'm not dogmatically religious. A few of the core beliefs that I grew up with, and these are ones that I absorbed from a conservative Christian household as a child, well, they were still really operating in my subconscious as an adult. And a few years ago, I was in a space where I felt overwhelmed and I needed to ask for help. But I couldn't seem to make that happen because even though I could logically outline the real and tangible benefits, I just couldn't get it out of my mouth. And I realized that two old rules were guiding my decisions around asking for help. The first is, God doesn't give you more than you can bear. Now, tie that together with the point of life is service to the least of God's creatures, and together they absolutely took away my right to ask for help. Unconsciously, I believed that if I was struggling, well, it was my fault. It wasn't the context and it wasn't the environment surrounding me, because God would not give me too much. He would ensure that he didn't give me too much to handle, right? Following that train of thought, then, well, it must be that I was weak or useless. And if I was weak and useless, then I wasn't able to fulfill what I believed was my mission in life, service to others. And that left me feeling ashamed. I couldn't ask for help because it would show everyone how little I was worth. And these old beliefs, they kept me trapped, absolutely trapped in the status quo, feeling ashamed that I could not live up to the expectations that I would bear. And by bear, I mean, that silently smiling through my pain and the overwhelm that I felt. I needed to be able to bear it, to continue working towards my point in life. And it was a revelation to wake up and realize, well, those weren't my expectations. They weren't my beliefs. That was not my mission. I couldn't make a decision to ask for help or change my situation because I couldn't see my way out of the inherited trap that was created by those beliefs and expectations. But then I sat down and I codified my life code. Simply put, I basically sat down and thought through my current situation, my needs, my desires, in the current iteration of me, and I wrote out the beliefs that were floating around inside my head. Looking through them, I realized that most of them didn't reflect my life, but they very much reflected my childhood. Writing down the rules that govern your life, well, that's pretty easy. Defining what you want your governing code to be moving forward, that's a bit harder. But it's possible. If you don't have any idea about where you want to start, you can start by flipping the rule to see if the opposite rule resonates. So, for example, one of my old rules, well, it was that my value lay in what I did, not in who I was. I didn't have value for just being. And I noticed that this set me up for failure because if I felt tired and I didn't have the energy to do something someday, well, then I believed that both that day and my potential or mission, if you will, well, they were wasted. The new rule that I've written now that serves me a lot better is that being in harmony with myself is both a way of being and an action. And this absolutely sets me up for success because on the days that I feel depleted, I can invest in self-care. And this supports my being, which has innate value. How many of us have old rules haunting, our thoughts and our minds? And we are constantly making decisions to avoid being flooded with the ghosts of I should or I have to. Where you are making decisions in service of you, and also a vision of something larger that makes your life meaningful, and your life, not anyone else's, well, then you are moving towards fulfillment and success. But where you are making decisions just to avoid the ghosts in your mind, well, then you're fleeing. And when you flee, you don't end up in a strategic and purposeful place. Because the point is to run. It's to escape to anywhere. It's not to work towards a specific vision. So take the time and rewrite your rules in such a way that they reflect what you believe and what you are working towards in the current iteration of who you are. And identify and repurpose or release those ghastly shoulds. And you're going to see an immediate impact on your ability to make clear and purposeful decisions. Now, the second life-changing activity that I undertook was clearly identifying my values. Sure, I had values that I would point to if someone asked me about my values, but I hadn't sat down as an adult and really undertaken kind of a systematic review of my values, where they originated, how they showed up in my current iteration, and what the order of priority was. I mean, I certainly did that for lots of other things in my life, but not my values. You know, looking back 10 years ago, I would have immediately answered that my top value was service to others. I mean, as an adolescent, I won the Christian Service Award at my school. I mean, helping others was in my family's DNA. It wasn't a thought, it wasn't a decision, but it was part of my makeup. But I had noticed that despite absolutely exemplifying service, I didn't feel satisfied. I spent decades stuck in that conundrum. I mean, it took multiple rounds of critical thinking and a lot of self-reflection to figure out that service to others was not only my top value, well, it wasn't even in my top 3. And I think it took me such a long time to work through that because I couldn't see my way through the layers of self-judgment to give myself permission to admit and embrace that my top value, which turned out to be newness, adventure, spontaneity, was what I needed. And so for a long time, I just spent time asking myself what kind of person had such a shallow value as a top priority. Well, it turns out that it's a person who naturally loves to help others, but doesn't want to help the same person in the same way every day. You know, understanding that was what made me come alive. And when I could understand what drove me, what made me come alive, and how that interacted with other values, well, that helped me make some decisions and reposition activities that were in my life in ways that worked for me. Looking at the situation through the lens of newness and adventure, well, it didn't mean that I walked away from the opportunity to serve others. It just meant that I undertook it differently. And then suddenly, I understood why what I was doing wasn't translating to fulfillment. You know, looking at my actions through this lens helped me see how I could shift things in my life to find greater satisfaction. And as a result now, people in my life often comment on how I'm a different person. And it makes me smile because I know that they are meeting a different who, right? They are witnessing the peace that comes from resolving the internal conflict between who I should be and who I actually am in this version of me. And they are witnessing the fulfillment that came from learning how to make values-based decisions within a framework that I defined, one that serves my needs and desires. Thank you so much for listening today. Usually at the end of my videos and articles, I encourage you to try something, to put something that we've talked about into practice. So today I encourage you to go back, uncover at least 3 old rules that are haunting your life, and rewrite what works for you. Alternatively, write down the values that you inherited and look at how those are still showing up in your life. Do they serve you? Or do you need to refresh the page to reflect the current version of you? So come back to the comments if you do this and let this community know how it worked. And if you'd like a critical thinking partner to help you rework your values or codify your life code, then contact me on my website, www.meganwarrencoaching.com. You can use the link to schedule a free discovery call with me. Be well.